Welcome to IEPI Rugby. With me today we have Coach Joe Richards. My name is Levi Hawk. I am the captain at IEPI Rugby. And like I said, today we have Coach Joe Richards. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Joe. I coached rugby at IUPUI for 3 years. Before that, basically all my rugby coaching and playing was at Brownsburg. Played there starting in high school and coached junior high level. Actually, with you when you were in sixth grade the first time. So definitely remember some good stories with the youngsters. My brother was on that first junior high team. Some good stories that I coached with two of my best friends that I grew up with, played rugby with. So it was a good start in Brownsburg that led into IUPUI the last 3 years.
Yeah, and I know, like you said, Coach has been my coach forever. He was one of my first coaches, and he's simmered down a little bit, but he's still crazy, Coach Joe. So Joe, what are we doing here? What's this?
Really, one thing that's important to me as a coach is not just a player's skill set or what they can do on the field. Really, it's more important to me of what they do off the field. But I think as we all get older, we understand every man has a story, and I think one thing that these young kids can do is share their story. They share their film, their game film. They tell you how fast they can run the 40. They tell you what other sports they played in high school. They share all this information, but the one thing that I want to know as a rugby coach trying to see if they would fit at IUPUI is who is this kid? What's his backstory? I don't just need to know the rugby side. I want to know who you are, where you came from, and what rugby really means to you. If it's just a rec sport, then you may need to just focus on college and play it as a rec sport. But some of these kids really want to go to the top level. There's some big schools out there that offer scholarship. That's like getting paid to go to school.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that you could pass along with your film and your stats and all that is the person that you are. Sell yourself as a person, not a rugby player.
Right.
And hopefully me sharing my story today, you sharing your story sometime, maybe a couple other IUPUI players share their story. These high school kids can share their stories and pass this film on to their future college coach and help them get a better look.
Yeah, and we think this is a great opportunity for those of you watching that you come on the show and you tell us your story, and we'll just sit down and talk. So today we're just going to hear your story.
Okay.
But real briefly about me, I've played since I was fourth grade. Like I said, Coach Joe is one of my first coaches. So he's been a huge part of my life since then. And captain for 3 years at IUPUI since he came and I guess kind of saved the program. So, which we'll get into. But tell us your story.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like you. Grew up playing the American sports. Definitely big into basketball, but was big into football. Built more for football. So as I got into junior high and moving into high school, it was kind of more of my direction. But being a football player, it's fun. It's a team sport. But when you're a defensive lineman, it's tackle, block. Get off the block, make a tackle. It's great. I was a team player, but I had a football coach named Kurt Trout, who I don't know if you've met Trout before. He has started the program at Brownsburg, Fishers, and he's starting a program at Pendleton. And that's only from when I met him when I was in high school. So I don't even know what he did before that, what his playing days were or anything. But he was in my life at a young age. He was my in eighth grade, we were at the softball diamonds in Brownsburg watching some friends, some girls that we knew play softball. And the high school team was in their very first rugby season, and they were practicing. And after the practice was over, Trout was talking to a couple of my friends, and there was a player named Jeremy Strange. He was showing me how you can kick the ball, you can run the ball, you can pass the ball, you tackle. And I was just like, run the ball? You got to pass?
It's new for a big boy,
Right. Defensive lineman, you see the ball, you fall on it, you take a knee, it's over, right? Like you did something good, but they don't want you to do anything, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it was one of those, and I was like, well, I can do this and that. And he slowed it down, and I didn't learn the game of rugby or anything that night, but I was definitely interested. I was like, that seems cool. There was video games out with rugby on there. You didn't really know what you were doing, but it was always something was happening. It wasn't timeouts and sub this guy in and out or stop after every play. It was always going. Contact number 1 did the same stuff that number 13 did. I was like, this is really cool. Still didn't know what it was. And then my freshman year, I played football, and I was in Trout's English class. So it was double whammy, right?
Oh, he was a teacher too?
Yeah, he was an English teacher.
Okay.
So
cool.
And it was crazy because he was so high strung on the football field, but in the class he was so like he knew his role. Like he knew when I'm teacher, I'm going to be the best teacher. When I'm football coach, best football coach. Rugby coach, probably the best dad. I mean, that's just the guy he was. And hey, give rugby a try. Give rugby a try. I started with some winter workouts every Sunday night going in there. Well, then I enjoyed it, learned how to throw the ball and,
Yeah.
and simple stuff like when you were in junior high, like shovel a shovel to pass the ball, real simple stuff
Yeah.
to just kind of figure it out. And one thing that stuck with me is there was 3 Sundays in a row. It was like Super Bowl Sunday, and then like maybe before that it was a day or two after New Year. It was 3 Sundays in a row where I found stuff to do and I didn't go. And he found me, not even in class. He found me in the hallway. It was like, why have you been coming? And I was like, yeah, it's probably too late. I'm sorry. I gave it a try, And he's like, no, it's not too late. Come back out. We have 2 more indoor practices and we're outside. He said, you can quit. And you've heard me say this.
Yeah.
You can quit after you've played a full rugby game.
Yeah.
He's like, if you come to all the practices, play 1 rugby game, then you're allowed to quit. And I was like, okay, I'll just quit after the first game. Fell in love with it. I fell in love with the sport. Freshman year, learning as I go. The season's over quick. But some of my best friends played on that team with me, but then I also met a lot of cool people.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't just always training for football. It was like rugby and football. It was more balance. It brought balance to my life. It wasn't all football. I had been missing basketball,
Yeah.
And with rugby in my life, I really adapted to it. I was more built for it. I found out didn't matter who you were, where you came from, what you did, there was a position for you on the rugby field.
There's always a spot for you.
Yes. And one good thing about rugby in high school, and you've done it, you get to travel, hotel rooms, stuff like that. And it's not a free-for-all. It's very organized, very disciplined. But there's something different when you travel with a guy for 4 hours, 5 hours, stay in a hotel room. They start sharing their stories, what's going on at home, stuff like that. You start.
It's a deeper bond than just practice. It's a deeper bond than just practice.
Way past sports. Yeah, definitely. And you start to kind of get to know these guys, and then that next morning you wake up and you play a rugby game with them, and then you go to bed that night super sore. They're hurting just as bad as you are. They want it just as bad as you, and you're sleeping right next to them instead of going home after a normal game.
Right.
And it was just something that I was like, I want to play rugby the rest of my life. This is amazing. I'm good at it.
Yeah.
Football, I was good. I wasn't great. I could do the normal athletic, play football, hit stuff, but I wasn't real educated on the X's and O's, and I wasn't real big or strong or
You
fast.
weren't invested.
Yeah. Basically, I just played football because basketball's kind of running out, and I was good enough. So this was more of a love.
So how old were you when you first realized, like, this is my sport?
Probably sophomore year.
So
freshman year was learning, this is cool. I'm going to try to get all my friends to play next year.
Yeah.
Don't get caught talking about it at football practice to Trout.
And you see that now.
Yeah. And so at that point, that was my freshman year was only the second year Brownsburg had a team. So the football team wasn't really on us.
Yeah.
And Trout had that under control. He was a coach.
Yeah.
So no, we weren't. We were going and working out with the football team in off-season workouts, and then going to rugby practice. That's why Brownsburg was practicing at 5:30 and not like at 3:30 after school.
Right.
So he wasn't letting us miss any of that stuff. He had this saying he'd always say, "Don't use football as an excuse." Like talking about the workouts. Don't use football as an excuse. Use this to get better, because we'd be dogging. We would be so tired and be like, man, we did all the conditioning at football. And he would say, don't use it as an excuse. Use this to get better. I remember him saying that. I hated it at the time. I love it now.
You probably use it now.
Yeah. There's a lot that if you probably sat down with Trout for like an hour, you would be like, wow, Joe took a lot from Trout as a coach and a person.
Yeah.
And I'm good with that because I've always thought so highly of him.
Yeah.
Trout would be the first one to yell at me, get on me. But he was
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. But hopefully you'll say that.
I know I will.
He was the first one to say that you did really good, congratulated you, and made you really feel good about accomplishing something.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, good job.
And I know that too.
And he would go talk to parents. It was like, see, if you do this and this and this is what you get. And he started teaching me hard work pays off.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was getting at. And rugby, I know that now. At the time, it was slowly processing, so I couldn't sit back and say it like I'm saying it now.
Yeah.
It was more of like, I'm a kid, I'm growing, I'm learning. Being a young freshman boy, there's a lot going on in your life that you don't want to talk about to people and share with people, but you're kind of an awkward person. So to have someone outside the family like Trout really care about me, academics, football, rugby, so it led me into rugby. Him and Biggins were just 2 really good coaches. They were actually probably like in their late 20s, so they weren't the older coaches like some other sports.
Yeah.
They were hip. I remember Biggins used to listen to Beastie Boys pulling into practice. My dad never listened to music like that or anything, so I thought that was pretty cool, and we connected. But sophomore year, that's when I knew it was serious. Football would have me about 25 pounds heavier than rugby. Rugby was at the end of sophomore year, and I knew after my sophomore season, after getting some varsity time, I said, I'm not going to transform my body into the football body over the summer I'm just going to keep it at the rugby body and try to keep up at the
Right.
football level. I'm just going to keep the rugby body and keep getting better because I really, really think this could go somewhere. So that summer in football, just lost all the love. The practices were nag. I mean, nothing was fun. The games weren't even fun.
Yeah.
Getting 7 snaps on a Friday night was not great, but you're a junior, so you can't play JV. I mean, it just ran into so many curves, and it's not like I didn't want to play football because I loved rugby that much. It was just seriously the burn was the fire was gone.
Yeah.
And it was more of like taking away of what I wanted to do in life instead of giving me excitement and joy in life.
Yeah.
So junior year, I knew, and growing up, Levi, I was 100 or 0, meaning if I really wanted to do something, I was 100%. I was in it. I wasn't going to stop. I was determined. If I didn't really care about something, I couldn't even half-ass it. I couldn't 50% it. It was 0.
Yeah.
And it became like that. And honestly, that was a mistake in school. You know, it was 0 because only time I really tried hard in school was to get the GPA to play the sport.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing it for my own good service moving forward in college or grades or anything. It was so I didn't get in trouble by the rugby coaches
Right.
or parents wouldn't let me go.
Just enough.
Just enough.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was like last minute just enough. You know,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Are we going to do it or we're not? So, yeah, junior year, I told myself I'm done with football. I'm not going to do the off-season workouts anymore and just focused on rugby. I finished junior year football in the fall and then went into rugby and had a really good junior year. We kind of rebuilt that year. In 2005, when I was a sophomore, we had a really, really good senior class, and that was the first year we went to nationals. I was like, nationals, sweet. We went all the way to California. We played at Stanford on their university. They had some kind of football combine there because it was right before the summer, you know, spring season.
Yeah,
It was in
yeah,
May.
yeah.
And they had some really top-notch college guys out there. It was a smaller camp, but these athletes, these football athletes were out there wearing the Under Armour stuff. And I was just like, this is such a cool atmosphere. And we did really good. So then I was like, my junior year, I was like, I want to do that. We have a really good class. We could build this year. Next year, we could do our thing. And it just became an obsession. I mean,
Yeah.
I always loved sports. And to backtrack a little bit, I always liked the X's and O's of sports. I never went out there and was the tallest, fastest, strongest guy.
Right.
It was always IQ, even in basketball.
Yeah.
8th grade, I job shadowed Ron Hunter, the basketball coach at IUPUI.
No way.
Yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
had friends that wanted to be a doctor, friends that went to job shadow an engineer, and I said, I want to be a college basketball coach, and they're like, teachers like, I don't know who he would job shadow for that.
Yeah.
Luckily, one of the teachers, she was actually a 7th grade teacher. Her son went to the basketball camps at IUPUI. They got to know him and got me in. So I mean, even at a young age, I was drawing up plays for my 4th grade AAU basketball team for the coach to use in 4th grade. Junior
That's
year, I
awesome.
coached my brother's 3rd grade basketball team to an undefeated record. Like
So you've been a coach your whole life.
I was better at telling people what to do
Yeah,
than doing it
yeah.
myself. So no, so I always, you know, and Trout was that kind of coach that he would break stuff down after a game. This is
Yeah.
kind of before film. It was VHS stuff. So if someone really wanted to film, they had to carry these big boxes on their
Right.
shoulder to film.
Right.
So it wasn't out to watch as much. So we would actually talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
And he would pick my brain, and I just loved it. Where some guys would kind of get burnt out and want to go home, I would just want to keep going in circles with Trout.
Yeah.
And so senior year, I after a decent junior year, we made it to Midwest. We missed out on nationals by a little bit, but we knew we were good. I mean, I remember getting together with friends at 11:30 at night over the summer and doing tackling drills and just stuff that
Right.
I would have never done it for football.
Yeah.
I know you and your dad have talked about having like extra team meetings at the house and stuff for football or even
Yeah.
rugby.
Yeah.
That's how I was for rugby, 100, football 0. School 0. I was just I wouldn't attended those meetings that you guys had
Yeah.
unless I really liked what was going on.
Yeah.
So I was one of those. And senior year, I just remember really get going in rugby. My body was kind of maturing. I was kind of getting man muscles instead of like teenager muscles,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
I was way stronger, way faster, a couple inches taller. Probably looked even a little bigger.
Mm-hmm.
I went from like, I think I was like 180 and it was like 190 by the time senior rugby season started. But I felt like I was like 160 speed-wise. Strength was way higher. I was feeling real good, but I'd spent so much time on rugby that other stuff was slipping.
Yeah.
And growing up in my house, this is before I had found my faith and got baptized. So that I didn't have that. You know how a lot of times, like when there's like the last thing you can do for someone, the most powerful thing you can do is pray.
You're right.
Or the last thing you can do is lean back on your faith. Like that security, that wasn't there for me in high school. because I didn't know it. And so senior year, I always had enough grades to graduate and had good enough grades. So what happened was senior year caught my family by surprise. I went to we made it to nationals. We had a really good team my senior year. I mean, we were huge. Other teams were. There's a movie Forever Strong out, and it's about a Highland team. That Highland team, we played them in the first round at nationals in Utah, and it was 0-0 at half. First team ever to hold them scoreless for a half.
That's so cool.
Lost 29-0.
Still,
but it was 0-0 at half. We were feeling really good about ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we ended up winning the next 2 matches at nationals and got 5th. But as much fun as great of a story that was, the one thing I remember the most from that trip was freaking out because I knew I had to pass government. And
that was me.
so it's a real thing. I mean, you can have enough credits and all that, but if you slip on something, it's enough to hold you back. Yeah. And I remember we had the study tables because we were gone for almost a week. We were out in Utah, and Biggins was, Trout at this point had just left to smaller school for football. So Biggins was kind of by himself his senior year, and he was getting, just worn out. I could tell he was getting worn out, and the parents were doing everything they can to help, but it was $500-$600 to get each player to Utah. He did a lot for that club to be a volunteer coach.
Yeah.
And I just and it's so unfortunate because the thing I remember the most about that senior trip to nationals was me and Biggins sitting in the study room after everyone did their 1 hour or 2 hours mandatory studying. We'd stay there for like 2 or 3 more hours, and he would just kind of sit there to make sure I was doing it. And it was such a drag to him, and I felt terrible. And I would try to, I was just like, I already felt like I was letting people down. I was kind of embarrassed. Everything happened so fast, into this. I was just ready. All senior year, I was ready for rugby, but that also brought the end of the senior year, same time, the spring season.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the thing I remember is just doing everything I had to do to pass government. And I was also in a math class that had to be passed. And so before I left, the government teacher said, Joe's got to do all this while he's gone or he's not going to pass.
Yeah.
Math teacher was like, he's fine. Yeah. So we spent all this time and energy on government and got it done or whatever, and then come back from nationals. And the last day of school, like the day before we walk, I find out basically the last day I have to take this math test that was given while I was gone.
The day before you walked?
Yeah, the last day of school I had to take it because we were gone. We basically came back like 3 days before school was over, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So then I found out I had this math test I had to take that I didn't get ready for. Ended up failing it. Of course, it was the teacher's fault, the counselor's fault, everyone's fault except for mine. Right.
High school mentality.
Which I still thought I was going to pass. Well, they called me in at the end of the day, and they're like, you're not going to be able to walk tomorrow. You have to take math over the summer. I was devastated. And in rugby, in Indiana, you have the Midwest tournament, the national tournament, and then the very end is the state tournament. So it's a little different than most sports that we know. And so this was a Thursday, I believe, or maybe a Wednesday. Friday's the day we walk. Monday or Saturday is like semi-state, and Monday is state, or something like that. Or maybe we had a bye and we were playing in state on Monday, that Memorial Day. So Thursday, I find out I'm not able to walk. I don't want to tell my parents that we have the graduation party, everything in a couple weeks ready to go. I was crushed. Didn't want to tell my rugby teammates. So basically what I did is I told my parents. They were disappointed, but they're like, we have to take this math class over the summer and you got to get it done. And you still need to play rugby to finish out the season because your teammates need you. It wasn't for me to be able to play. If it was just about me, they would have called it quits because why would you be able to play if you can't get the grades?
Right.
And but they had me play because not to let my teammates down, and I had committed to it all year long. So that Thursday night, I remember just laying there and people were texting me like, "Hey, what's the plan basically for walking?" And I wasn't responding. And when I told myself, I said, "All right, I'm going to commit suicide while everyone's walking." That's why I didn't have a plan. I wasn't smart. I didn't have like, I'll use this gun, or I didn't look anything up. I didn't know. I just told myself I was going to do it. Like I didn't have it planned out or anything. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to end it. I'm too embarrassed. Like I don't want to tell my friends I didn't walk. I'm just going to do it while they're walking. And then Friday morning, I convinced myself I'll wait until Monday night because my teammates need me for this rugby game, this semi-state and state. We had Penn, and then winner went to the championship on Monday. And I was like, I'll just wait until Monday night and I'll do it because I don't want to let everyone down. I don't want to be a distraction, but I'll kill myself Monday night. And I was like, okay, that's it. Like, it was in my brain. And we had never beaten Penn before. We were in like our 5th year. And we had beaten North Central twice that year. So it was like North Central, Cathedral, Brownsburg, and Penn. Those were the 4 big dogs. We had beaten Cathedral twice maybe, once at Midwest and once in regular season. We beat North Central twice. And we lost to Penn once. And so we were playing Penn in the semi-state on Monday. I was quiet all week. People were like, where were you? Why weren't you at graduation? Didn't respond to any of it. We had a run through Saturday. I kind of kept to myself, acted like I wasn't really feeling that good. People kind of left me alone. And then Monday, I was real quiet. No one really cared about graduation Monday. It was game day. And going into Monday, I was going to kill myself that night. So I knew this was my last day. Oh, and it was my birthday. That Monday. So I had it all figured out. Didn't have my faith to rely on or anything like that. And so we're playing Penn, and it's probably the most intense game I ever played in. I had a heck of a game. I scored the winning try. I mean, I felt so good after that game. I just remember when I scored, all this built-up emotion of letting down my coach, Biggins, my parents, my teammates, everyone but myself. I didn't worry about I don't know why I wasn't worried about letting myself down. I thought I let everyone else down.
Yeah.
And so we win against Penn like 10 it was 10-8, I think, because they missed a try. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was like 8-3, and I scored and we won. And I had a really good game, and I was like, that was awesome, and kind of left my brain for a little bit. And then we played against North Central, and I remember thinking, we beat them twice. We're going to win the state championship. It's going to be the first time we ever won state. And I was like, wow, I'm going to be a state champion on my birthday, and then we'll just call it quits, and this was a good life. And I seriously thought like that. It's crazy because I can't even get close to that now. But we go in, and obviously all 15 of us thought we were going to beat North Central because they came out and blasted us. And we looked, and it was so bad that after about 20 minutes in the first half, we were like, we got to turn this thing around. And it was so bad, and we were so far behind we couldn't turn it around. It's kind of like this year, Louisville with IUPUI. Yeah, you guys wanted to turn it on so bad at half, but you dug the hole so deep. The lesson was already going to be learned the way it was, and you're going to have to rebound the next day, not today.
Yeah.
So that's the way it was. And it was smackdown. And I remember after the game I was sad or whatever, but coaches and parents were like, you played phenomenal today. Both games. You've been getting better every game this year. It's so great. Like they could tell I was working really, really hard in rugby. And so on the way home, I realized, I was thinking, because I was a 3-hour car ride, and I was like, I can't commit suicide. I literally just proved to myself that, and I've already known this, but I proved to myself that when I work hard for something, I get what I deserve. When I'm lazy and I assume I'll be all right, like the North Central game, I lose. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is, from now on, when I want something, I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can at it, and I don't think I'll fail. I didn't fail in the classes I liked because I tried hard because I liked them.
Yeah.
When I had Trout as an English teacher, I liked going to his class, so I got an A. When I didn't want to go to math class and I didn't want to do the math homework, I got an F. When I really wanted to work hard and be good at a sport, I was really good at the sport. When I really, really wanted to work hard and beat a team that we'd never beat before, we beat Penn. When I thought it was all settled, we had North Central in the bag, didn't want to have to work hard for it, didn't want to have to think about it, I lost. And on the way home, I was like, for now on, the rest of my life, anytime I want to do something that I want to accomplish, I'm going to try my hardest. And that's how rugby saved my life, because if it wasn't for that rugby game, I think I might have committed suicide because I was so embarrassed. But rugby helped me learn, if you really, really, really want something in life, you have to try really hard for it.
Yeah.
Like the sayings that we have at practice, you got to be willing to do the things you don't want to do in order to enjoy the things you do want to do. I say that stuff to you guys because that's the stuff I struggled with.
Yeah. You're speaking to younger Joe.
Yeah, basically the guys that grew up in Hendricks County or around Indianapolis that play rugby, that go to school, a lot of similarities there. I was like, when I coached at Brownsburg, I told the guys, like, I was in that same hallway 5-6 years ago. Talk to me. So I didn't want anybody, and I still don't want anybody. I don't want anyone to be like me and go home and think they have nobody, right? So it's easier said than done because now I have my faith and I've been baptized. But when senior year happened, I kept playing rugby for a couple years after that. I ended up graduating, took the math class, crushed it because I told myself I'm going to dominate it.
Yeah.
And if you work hard at it, you can honestly do it. A lot of times we don't fail stuff because we're not good enough or we're not smart enough. We fail stuff because we didn't try hard enough. Really, they talk about it in school. They talk about it in sports. You know, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. If you show up 95% of the days to school and actually listen to your teacher for 95% of that class, you're going to pass. Like, there's just certain things that's real. That's a real thing. It's true. I lived it. I saw both sides of it. And so when I was playing rugby for the Impalas after high school, I kept hurting my same shoulder. And about 2021, I was like, all right, it's time for me to start figuring out how to coach basketball. And Brownsburg reached out and was like, hey, not Brownsburg, but Andrew Clossy, talked to him about, hey, come out and coach. Your brother, Will's coming. You're going to be bringing him to practice anyway. He was in 8th grade. So I was like, for one, I owe it to Clossy. He was a teammate, and he was a team captain for me. But I owe it to rugby to coach and give back to these kids what rugby gave to me. And it was probably halfway through that first season when you were in 5th grade or 6th grade, whenever year you first started playing. Yeah. I realized I just want to coach rugby because it brought back, it was like 2 years, I was 21, it was like 3 years later, it brought back that, oh yeah, rugby did save my life. And then right around 21, 22 is when I got baptized, went through RCIA, started attending Catholic church, praying, reading the Bible. And that's when I realized rugby is my purpose to serve my community. I loved coaching, always knew I loved coaching from 3rd grade. Fell in love with rugby. Rugby ended up basically knocking sense into me. And then my faith showed me rugby's my platform to get back to my community. Whether you're a chef, whether you're somebody that works in the hospitals, whatever it is, all of us have a platform to get back to our community. And one of the most fulfilling things is knowing that you found your platform.
Right.
And I was like, no matter what wins or losses, I can connect with these guys. I can be so tough on them that they're going to know what failure is like. I'm going to be so tough on them that they're going to know how to resist it and just get way better and achieve something they really, really wanted. I can do this. So we coached Brownsburg junior high like 3 years. Andrew Clossy was the head coach most of the time. Corey had kind of taken over. And then me, PJ, and Corey moved up to the high school level. In the middle of our 20s, probably 24, 25, and I just really fell in love with rugby, and that's when rugby kind of like college rugby was kind of recruiting. They were coming to the tournaments. I remember Gary Anderson from Kentucky was throwing out T-shirts to players and talking to us about certain players, and Michigan State had a couple of their players at the Midwest tournament. So I was coaching the first couple of years of Brownsburg high school level. I was like, rugby's getting real. It's serious. These guys have a path they can actually take now. And so college blew up quick. I mean, Gary Anderson will tell you, like, he was one of the first ones in 2010, 2011 going to these national tournaments and talking to these kids about Kentucky. Now these kids get talked to at, like, freshman, sophomore level while they're playing for ERA or whatever it may be. So that happened so quick, and Brownsburg was going great. We knew PJ was on the way out. We went to nationals all 3 seasons. It was a different format than it was when I was a player. But Brownsburg was always successful. We were really good. We ran into, like, Roy Irish, who was always number 1 in the nation. Penn was really good a couple of years. So, but we held our own, and I was like, yeah, I want to be a head coach. I want to run a program. Like, that's what I want to do. And I felt like me and Corey were doing a lot of that work already because PJ was being tugged in so many directions. Yeah. And so we had talked, and PJ was kind of like, yeah, Joe, I think you'd be a good fit for Brownsburg. I'm going to let them know I'm leaving, and then we'll kind of just talk to the board about you getting in as head coach. Well, I got wind of it like a couple days before. I think PJ and Corey knew a couple weeks before our meeting. But Biggins, Dan Fitterling, who was the high school coach that stayed in that hotel room with me to help me finish studying for the government, he was at IU, and he told them he wanted to come back to Brownsburg. So at the board meeting, I kind of already knew about it a day or two ahead. The board did not know, but he walked in and was like, I'd like to be the head coach and the president or nothing. And I even told them, I said, this would kind of be ridiculous not to have him the head coach. Like, he started this program. He's the man. This is his baby. He just went and coached at IU. as much as I want it, he's the
Welcome
guy.
back.
Right.
Yeah.
So then my fourth season at Brownsburg was with him. During that fourth season, I think you were a freshman at IUPUI. My brother was at IUPUI. Some former Brownsburg players. One of my favorite players, Colton Voiles, was at IUPUI. Cody, one of the nicest young gentlemen I ever met in high school. He actually introduced himself to me when I first started coaching.
That's awesome.
You know, like,
That's
he came up to
that's
me.
something Cody would do.
Yeah, as a junior or senior in high school. He came up to me and introduced himself before I could introduce myself to him. So you guys were all on that IUPUI team, and I was watching you guys, and it looked like a bunch of really good rugby players together playing at a low-level college level that wasn't real organized, but so much talent. And I was like, that would be a fun team to coach.
Yeah.
And with the college level, you're dealing with more older adults. Not like the email list wasn't the parents, it was the players.
Yeah.
The group chat was the players, not the parents. The players were the ones that had to buy the rugby shorts and the apparel. I mean, it was just a different vibe.
Just make your job easier.
Yeah, that, and you can focus more on the student, developing a relationship with the student, and not just his mom and dad. And
right.
And at the same time, college kids will not waste their time on rugby like a high school kid will. A high school kid will play rugby because his friends are. He's not really invested all the way, but he's just playing because that's what his friends do every night.
Right.
College kids, they have jobs, girlfriends, their schoolwork.
Yeah.
Everything
they don't do it if
on.
they don't want to do it.
They're not coming to practice at 8 o'clock at night unless they really want to play rugby.
Yeah.
So whatever happened with the coach before me, he had moved on. It was like a year and a half of really good success. IPY was new. I had been part of a new program before with Brownsburg. I've seen Trout do it at Fishers at this point. Trout and I have always stayed in touch. So I saw what his game plan was for Fishers, and just kind of came to IPY. And Logan Williams was like, yeah, well, we're talking to a couple other coaches as well, but we're definitely interested in you. And then before I knew it, that season at Brownsburg with Biggins. As the head coach, that's when I found out I was going to be the rugby coach. But the crazy thing about that is, while I was coaching Brownsburg, when Logan's like, do you want to be one of the guys that he called it like interviewing it for it, but it was just more him just like finding out like, hey, is this coach going to fit with us kind of thing instead of trying to do his own thing. And so when I met with him, I didn't know if I wanted to do it or not because I didn't know if it would be too much of a commitment. I was so in love with Brownsburg rugby. That's actually the only rugby I knew other than 2 playing years for the Impalas. It's all Brownsburg.
That's true.
My best friend at the time, who worked side by side, was like, you better do this. You better interview. Even if you get the job and you don't want it, tell him no. But just do it, because he knew I was, like, as much as I knew Dan Fitterling needed to be the Brownsburg coach, I was still crushed a little bit because I wanted it. I wanted a chance. I wanted it. I was told by someone I really, really respect and know, I was told, the only thing that worries me about you being a head coach is the administrative work. I don't think you'd keep up with that. I think you'd be good at the practice stuff. And man, I was like, no, I can do this.
Yeah.
And they're like, you have to schedule refs and bring it.
Yeah,
I'll build a program. So my friend's like, so he was actually the one I just threw everything on because no one else really knew what I was talking about. And he was that guy I could just throw everything off. And then he wasn't going to go spill my beans with anybody because he didn't know anybody other than me. Like my friends or family. He didn't know. So he talks me into like doing it, and we're traveling to Midwest on a Friday for the Brownsburg tournament. And I was like, I think I'm supposed to find out today if I got it or another guy got it, because there was another guy that they were talking to. And I actually know that guy, friends with him. He actually coached me at one time. So
really?
So on the way down to Midwest tournament for Brownsburg, I get the call. He's like, yeah, you got the job. Well, Thursday before I left work, my friend's like, you better call me first thing and find out if you're coaching for IUPUI or not. I was like, all right, I'll let you know. So I got off the phone, and I call him, and I leave him a voicemail. It's like 3:37. I leave my friend a voicemail. I was like, don't tell anybody yet. I just want to kind of get through this Brownsburg season. And so we get to the hotel, and it's like 2 hours later, and my phone starts blowing up. And I find out after work at about 3:30, that guy went over, my buddy Joe Gooden, went over to his friend's house to visit a friend, and that guy's younger brother was in town, like a 21-year-old kid from Vegas, and the kid was high on drugs. My buddy walks into the house. He thought my buddy was the devil, and he shot and killed my best friend. So I didn't even get to tell my best friend that I was going to be coaching IUPUI, and he's the one that kind of pushed me to go do it. Thank God I had my faith by that point.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, are you kidding me?
That's something that you need more than
I already had another best friend 2 or 3 years after high school, die in a car accident. And my faith was just getting started then. So I was just like, man, this is luckily I had excitement through IUPUI rugby. Brownsburg still was finishing their season, so I could like distract myself through that process. I ended up having to quit that job like 3 weeks later because everyone kept asking me what I knew. I just had to get away from it. But if it wasn't for him pushing me, or if it was like 3 weeks later or a year later and he wasn't around, I don't know if I might have just been stuck at Brownsburg as an assistant.
Yeah.
And then we get to IUPUI, and I asked a couple coaches to help coach, and they're like, no, I don't think they wanted to be underneath like a 28-year-old guy. I think they were like, no, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to be the man. I'm 40, you know. But there was one guy that was like, I will help y'all do whatever you want. I won't even be a coach. I'll hold pads. I'll do this. And it was your dad, Brad Hawk. So Brad Hawk joins me. We have a lot of talent the first year. We just moved up to Division II from Nescro. And as you know, I think you were a sophomore that year. I mean, we went undefeated, blew through the conference.
Yeah. We were a new team.
You guys had told me that, hey, in our year and a half, we played USI 3 times. We lost to them all 3 times. We went and took care of that business, won the conference championship, made it to national tournament. I mean, that was a good year. And that's when me and Brad were like, we got something serious here. Let's start recruiting some players. Let's make this a thing and see how much we can grow this program. Second year was great. A lot of young freshmen, as you remember. Like, if you remember your first year, we had Logan, Cody, Luke Williams, JB, Rizzo, all these guys that were gone the next year. It was basically like you and Will and a whole cast of freshmen.
Yeah.
And
it was a new team. I mean, you had to start over.
And we still ran through that conference.
And we still did.
We still ran through that conference. And, you know, me and your dad, we didn't talk to you guys about it, but Coach Brad and I were like, 5 years and we'll be Division I. Kind of like, we can do it kind of thing. After that second year, making it to nationals, being undefeated, we're like, I think we're ready, jokingly. And then Roger, the commissioner of the MAC, reaches out and was like, I think you guys would be a good fit for us. And we get to talking to him. And I remember I asked you guys, I called you guys in like right before you all left campus in the spring. And it was like, hey, we'll have to train all summer, but do you guys want to move up to Division I? It was like the dumbest question I've ever asked.
Yeah.
You guys were like, let's go.
It was.
Let's do it. Let's do it. You know, we went from bringing guys out that we found at tabling that just wanted to play like twice a week and play for fun to like guys that were like, hey, it's between, like, I have emails from parents like, it's between IU, IUPUI, it's between Bethel, USI, IUPUI. What would my son get if he came to school there? You know, they have his degree at both schools, and it just is like we were bringing in people like Joey Sturgill and stuff that were big time rugby players that like Luke Hawk been playing since a young age that Kentucky reached out to Luke. I mean, Joey Sturgill was looked at by other schools, but they chose IUPUI. Obviously, degree and fit, but the school is first. But once you get it down to like 3 schools, these kids were choosing one of these 3 schools based off rugby, and we were that pick.
Right.
And so we moved up to Division I.
And it wasn't just once or twice. It was multiple students.
Yeah, it went from finding sophomores and juniors to play on a team that we had like 10 rugby guys, fill in like the other 10 of just like former athletes, to bringing in 10 freshmen that played rugby since like 7th, 8th grade, like that, just overnight. And now, you know, we are where we are. Coached ERA rugby based off basically doing what I did at IUPUI, seeing some of the best talent that tournament has out in Colorado. You know, we have players that came from ERA or from USA Rugby South that went overseas. So it's getting real serious on campus. I think we have more more fans at our home games than like the soccer team does.
Yeah.
Guys and girls. So we're really building up a rapport on the campus.
Yeah.
And I mean, last year we stumbled a little bit. We still made it to the conference tournament, and that was an accomplishment all on its own because it was our first year at the D1 level to finish in the top 4 of probably one of the best Division I conferences. I mean, Bowling Green in Western Michigan go to the national tournament, like Elite 8, Final 4 every year. That's 2 out of our conference.
Well, Western Michigan got they got 3rd this year?
They got second this year. But the year before, Bowling Green won the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, and Louisville's right there. Louisville beat Bowling Green in the middle of the season. We had a slobber knocker with Louisville in the conference tournament. So we're right there. And the crazy thing is, and I don't think a lot of people know this, we only had 4 seniors graduate last year. Mm-hmm. 2 of them started in our final game. I mean,
it's crazy.
You're going to be a 4th
total
year captain,
difference.
3rd year captain.
Right.
You know, we are all those freshmen that came in your second year are going to be juniors this year. Like, it's amazing, and it's so good that God kind of led me the way he led me, because I can kind of push that onto you guys and my story, or coach through my lens. You know, I wanted to share it with them a few times, but when I get on guys or I want to see perfection, at practice with the plays and let's not mess around, let's get all this done, it's because there's a time and a place. And it took me so long to figure out, Levi, that there's a time and a place. I always wanted to have fun and always wanted to work towards what I liked, where there's people in this world like Kobe Bryant that always worked on what they weren't good at. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't figure out that time and a place as a high school kid. Now I'm teaching it to you guys because there's a time to have a lot of fun, goof off, relax, not worry about any priorities. But then there's also a time and a place that you lock it in. It's 2 hours of rugby. It's an hour and a half of school. You have a test tomorrow. Spend an hour and a half studying. If you can figure out the time and place, saying when to have fun, when to relax, when to be serious, you're going to get so far in life.
Yeah.
And your hobbies and your likes and your personality will lead you to what you want. But to get there, it's going to take the hard work when it takes time, but also kind of relaxing, and getting away from it and having a chill night or, watching Netflix and having popcorn and staying away from that seriousness. But if you guys can get that balance, this rugby story and game will teach you way more about being a father, a teacher someday like yourself, an engineer, a doctor. It will help you achieve that stuff because that's what rugby does. It does more than football and basketball and all that stuff. And it did it for me. I mean, it saved my life. Probably I thought I was done and I was embarrassed, but rugby showed me if you work hard enough at something, it's always possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And basically from what I learned from your story, and thank you for sharing that. That's definitely deep. Is just this sport is more than just a sport.
Yeah.
You create these bonds, you create these friendships that are going to last forever.
Right.
So thank you for sharing your story.
Absolutely. I mean, it's crazy seeing, Cody have a baby.
Yeah.
We have 3 former IUPUI players that are police officers at Avon Police Department right now. Like, that's the stuff I love. I get chills about that stuff. That's the stuff I want my kids to be around, you rugby players. And I think another thing that if we get this out and people can hear this story, you and I want these high school kids or even college kids to share their story with us. We'll get their story out there, whether you want to get drafted by the MLR or you want to get a scholarship to Lindenwood or play rugby at IUPUI or go out west and play for Cal.
Yeah.
Don't just send them your game film and how much you can bench and how fast you can run the 40.
Come and talk to us.
Let them know who you are as a person.
Yeah.
I feel like this story, me sharing this, is going to let the players that I coach know who I am a little bit more than they already know.
Yeah.
Let your future coaches find out who you are, and we're going to help. We can do it all through the computer. You can sit on your couch, and Levi and I will come to you and we'll talk, and we'll hopefully get your story out for you as well. And that way we can just keep building the rugby community as we know that we can.
Absolutely. So. Enough said. Is there any closing comments you want to say to potential people that want to be on the show?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. We got some IUPUI rugby tags up there. We can attach our email address or our contact. We're going to be looking to do this as soon as possible. I mean, we got nothing else to do. And then another thing is this is a really good setup. It's really interesting to see how you and I kind of talked about this, and then right after dinner, you're in here setting all these cameras up and the microphones, and like it's so natural to you. It looks really tough on the screen to me, but it's just one of those. I love to see how people are fascinated with their own passions and their own things that they like. Aiden's important in my life, and I never cared about Star Wars or anything growing up, but his hobbies have become mine because I just let him be who he is. And something like this can become my hobby or something just because I care about getting the stories out. But you have done such a good job with the setup. It's really cool. And listening to your other podcast with Seth and having Harlan on there last time, it's really cool. And I think it's a perfect time to do this. We're all kind of locked in. And some guys aren't having that senior season right now to get looked at by colleges, or they're not able to train with their coaches right now to get into the MLR and the film. Well, we're here to help, and we can do this while staying safely apart. Yeah, and that's the greatest aspect of what we're doing right here. Yeah. You'll be on the bottom part of the screen talking to us. Yeah. So we left our information, our Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Please hit it up. Please reach out, and we'll feel free to. It'll be our honor to talk to you. Absolutely. So, I think the best way to start out with, if you listen to this and you think it'd be a good idea to share your story, you would like it, or we could help you share your story with future coaches. I know if you send a message to the Instagram IUPUI Rugby page, I'll get a notification for the messages. So if you send a message saying, "Hey, good podcast with Levi, I would be interested in doing something like that," then we can share a little bit more contact and get going from there. But We don't just want IUPUI guys or Indiana guys or even Midwest guys. We want players from all over to share their story, because Levi and myself, we love the sport of rugby, and we want to help this thing grow as much as we can.
Absolutely.
So, you're doing awesome, dude. Keep it up. This is great.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. It's been a great talk, and again, thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, hopefully I didn't ramble on too long.
No, it was perfect. I was
we had a
engaged the whole
timeline
time.
at first, but I don't know how we set up on
We
that.
said 20 minutes tops.
What are we at?
We're at 45 minutes.
Yeah, I need a drink of water.
Well, thank you for tuning in. Again, please reach out, and we'll be on here hopefully weekly.
Yeah.
But
So are we going to share your rugby story before your senior season, or are we going to wait until you win a national championship and then share your story? What are we going to do?
I'll have 2 different stories by then.
2 different stories. So
Yeah.
we'll share one now. It'll be like the Last Dance for the Bulls. We'll have
That's
like
right.
a 10-part story.
That's
series.
right. We'll have a whole documentary.
Michael Jordan, Levi Hawk, about the same thing.
That's right. You
All
hear
right.
him. You heard it from him.
There you go. Awesome. Good.
Well-
Well, hopefully we'll have someone on here real soon, someone new that we can talk to.
Absolutely. Thank you for tuning in, and please hit us up.